We are back in what is setting up to be a very busy and important day for the trial. Remember, people are being flown in. There's limited time. They're even going to be having witnesses out of order to make sure they can hit everyone. Lori walks into the courtroom with her things, and to me, it looks like she has one of those cheap, mass-produced blue medical masks in her hand. She's not wearing it, but I can't really tell, but that is the same color, at least to me. Colors are kind of a big problem in this trial, so you let me know what you think if you watch the footage. People on the scene claim this is a 100% capacity courtroom. People have been waiting outside since 5:30 a.m. wanting in, and we begin with a physical sidebar. Both sides and a Department of Corrections officer, they end up clearing the courtroom. My guess is going to be Lori claiming medical reasons to get out of court again. Like, she's claimed unspecified medical reasons, and she's had been checked out by the facilities and they can't find anything. I mean, it could be anything. She could be claiming a testicular torsion for all we know. Who knows what she's trying? We're probably never going to know, but everyone gets let back in and the jury comes in and we do begin the trial. So whatever her delay she was planning was, it did end rather quickly. The judge explains the witnesses will be out of order, so next up is Daniel Moss. He had a window tinting shop in Rexburg, Idaho. He explains how people would set up appointments. They would send appointment texts back to them. He explains window tinting levels. 5% only lets in limited light, so it appears black from the outside. You would not be able to see into a car with 5%. 20% you can tell a silhouette. People can do different percentages for different windows on the same car. Next is screenshots from a business phone and camera system, a phone call, and business messages about this service. Lori objects to relevance, but it's admitted. How is it relevant? Well, let's see. She is accused of being involved in a conspiracy where her brother shot a gun out of the back of a Jeep that couldn't be seen into. Yeah, that seems completely relevant. They sent a message on September 25th that they can drop off the car at 9 a.m. They show the Jeep being cleaned to put the tint on the windows. Jeeps have factory tint. You just put a layer on top of the 20% factory layer. He was asked to put a 5% tint on the back windows. So it was the back three windows. This would be darker because it's actually overlaying the 20% tint. If officers tested that tint, it would come up as a 2% or a 0%. You can't see anything. If someone is laying in the back, you wouldn't be able to see them. Lori objects speculation and it's overruled. He knows you can't see people inside with a tent. Broad daylight, you cannot see them. Factory tent, 20%, you could see inside. The vehicle was then dropped off. Surveillance camera caught the plate, but it's blurry. It was a Texas plate. There's a sticker on the front windshield. That was there when it was brought in. They show the receipt sent to the phone. 5% tint on black, 20% back on 20% on doors. He never saw the owner of the Jeep. State is done. Lori has no questions and no questions from the jury. Next up is Thomas Miller with the DEA, and I found that interesting. DEA is involved, but it makes sense in a moment. He heads the license plate reader program. He explains how a license plate reader works. Law enforcement outside the DEA can actually access the DEA's platform that lists license plates. The camera used to take the exhibit photo captures the back plate. Lori objects to relevance, which is absurd, but it's allowed. They show the photo with the plate, time, direction, coordinates are shown. It has no tire in the photo, and there's a close-up image of the license plate. This is the Jeep. This is the Jeep heading in the direction that they claim it was without the tire. Lori has questions this time. Is that the only picture you have? And they said, yeah, that's the only one they have on their platform. He doesn't know how many readers they have, and there were at the time in Gilbert, Arizona. He doesn't know how many in Mesa, Arizona. Sometimes software or hardware issues, sometimes speed or amount of traffic might block it being taken. There are also ways to defeat the cameras as well. Lori says there are ways to defeat them. Yes, and Lori says, interesting. The state moves to strike, and the judge tells the jury to disregard the noise the defendant made. Lori is pretty much laughing and asks how you don't have any other photos. State says asked and answered. Judge agrees, but lets him answer. Yes, that's the only sighting on their diesel platform. So this is the only one on their platform. Nothing on the first, second, or third. Lori tries to get the witness to speculate on distances. Lori tries to get them to speculate about hours. It's objected, sustained, and the state is back up. The system is actually set up for drug trafficking, so the cameras are on drug routes. Not all license plate readers go into DEA systems. There are many different systems across the nation. The DEA system is small. And you can beat the cameras by changing numbers on a plate or covering the plate. If traffic is busy, it's less successful, and the older the camera, the higher fail rate. But they say that Jeep was traveling that day. It happened. There's a sidebar, and then there's a lunch break, and that is the beginning of the case. And a lot of people are complaining that not much got done, and that is because of the time it took to, I'm assuming, get everyone in the courtroom, everyone quieted down, bring Lori in, and then we have to have Lori to have a sidebar, and then after the sidebar, they have to empty the courtroom for whatever Lori's doing. I'm assuming it's Lori's fault, and whatever that delay is, then they have to get everyone back in, then they have to bring the jury in. So yeah, it took up a considerable amount of time, even though they seem to do it rather quickly. There's just so much of people movement that delays things. Yeah, that is all before the lunch break. That's all they got done. And if you've watched the rest of the days, that's not a lot. I wonder if Lori is going to try more delay tactics, because remember, a lot of these witnesses were flown in. They need to go through today, and she can cause people problems, and I think she's trying to do that. We are back, and the state says their next witness is really out of order. She created the DNA profile for Alexander Cox from a known sample. An officer later will testify obtaining the blood from the autopsy. They will have the person who took the cutting from the Jeep, the DNA analyst will be there today. They're going to have more people to set the foundation. They have discussed this because they want to have a record, because the detective Pillar isn't going to have to hasn't been able to go through his full questioning yet. Basically, if you don't remember, he got halfway through his questioning yesterday. They had to stop. And then today, people are flying in, so they're making it so these people can testify when they fly in. Lori is objecting, saying the woman who took the blood isn't present. I believe that's the woman that there's an order or a motion that was granted where she is not allowed to bring up their drinking. It's like a drinking incident, what I've been told. Some incident, she's not allowed to bring it up. The judge explains the person who tested it, though, is present. And Lori says, isn't this confusing to the jury? And I do agree that going out of order is confusing, but the judge says that there's nothing making the state go linearly. They don't have to call people in sequence, and the state also points out that the case got delayed 2 days because of Lori. Sepinoso is up. Not going to fail to pronounce her first name. She used to do DNA analysis. She used to work in Mesa, Arizona, doing the DNA analysis and blood stain analysis. She gives her credentials. She explains what DNA is and where it came from. She explains that no source is collected directly from an individual. Sometimes people will do a known DNA profile. Someone else will do another profile of unknowns, and then it gets compared. She did a DNA profile for a DNA sample directly from Alex Cox as a known sample. A tech picks up the evidence directly from the police evidence and is stored until it's analyzed. She explains it's like a blob on like a piece of filter paper. They cut out part of it and they use that to make a DNA profile for Alex Cox. Lori has no questions. Jury has no questions. We're already on to the next witness. Next up is Lisa Perry, forensic scientist in the biology unit at the time of the crime. They went through her qualifications. She explains the process to work on swabs. She received swabs in this case and noted at the time nothing was tampered with. Swabs from a steering wheel, a driver's side seat belt, a gear shift, passenger interior door handle, spare tire, driver's side interior handle, and she did cuttings to prepare the samples. Basically, if I'm remembering right, they cut the swab in half, so half can be tested later. No questions from Lori, no jury questions. We are already on to the next witness. A lot of the time was spent with their backstory and their qualifications that I am skipping over. Next is Marianne Robb, retired police officer from Gilbert, Arizona. She's the one from the Brandon body cam footage, if you've watched it. Go through credentials. She responded to the shooting at Brandon's home. She saw Brandon by the road, Tesla in the driveway, window in the driveway. All she was told is possibly a rifle. She saw a hole in the frame of the car, looked like a bullet hole. She's seen bullet holes before. Brandon made a comment that it might have been a BB gun at some point because his window was shattered, but he didn't see a hole. Didn't see like a projectile in the car. The officer knew this wasn't from a BB gun. Brandon said he hadn't seen the hole in the car until pointed out to him. She couldn't find an exit using a flashlight. She tried to use a pen to find trajectory and an exit. She made a call to another officer, made it very clear this wasn't a BB gun and they need to set up a crime scene. She took photos of the scene. She asked about the glass because she thought he might have pulled it out, thought Brandon did it. That's when she learned the Tesla automatically opens and it fell out. She made sure he hadn't touched it. Brandon was bewildered about what happened. That's the word she used, bewildered. After he saw it was a bullet hole, he sat down. Brandon's hands were shaking. Described a darkish green Jeep Wrangler. The back window opened and he saw a muzzle. Bang, his window shattered. The Jeep was parked the wrong way next to the van. Two-door Wrangler, Texas plate. He believed it was a rifle. This officer has fired rifles before. Sometimes, depending on if they're a bolt action or not, they don't even have a casing that comes out automatically. She didn't expect to see a casing, however, because the barrel was the only thing sticking out. And, you would have to remove the tire to position like that. So basically, she's explaining why the tire would have been removed. She asked Brandon if someone could be with him during the investigation, some family or something. His friends got called and they showed up. They showed crime scene tape location. She talked to Brandon multiple times. Brandon said the only thing he could think of was his soon-to-be ex-wife's family and an incident that happened in Chandler. He provided names involved in that incident, Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. Provided that Lori and Alex lived in Texas, at least at some point. I believe he thought they still lived in Texas at the time, but I'm not entirely sure on that. He explained he had literally just moved in just a few days ago to this house. He explained what he did that morning, dropping his kids off to his ex-wife, at least one of them, the others to school. This officer was wearing a body cam and taking notes. No neighbor cameras. She stayed with Brandon until detectives came. Lori is up for cross. Oh boy. She saw Brandon in the street, maybe 2 or 3 feet from the driveway. She parked across the street. She spoke to him, had him move to the sidewalk and explain what happened. He was on the phone with 911 until she talked to him, spoke for a few minutes before looking at the Tesla. Lori asked, did she put her pin in the hole to look for a projectile? She said projectile and trajectory. Putting a pin in is typical. No large objects in the hole. She could see the direction the bullet went in. Slight upward motion. She didn't measure the hole, but it was a rifle round. She guesses on bullet size. She didn't tell detectives her trajectory finding because detectives can easily do the same. Nothing was found in back seat. She doesn't remember about any glass in the vehicle, if it was there or not. The window fell when the door was open. She didn't see anyone move the glass. The tint held it together. Window tint is very important to this case. She didn't find projectile or hole in glass. Brandon said it might have been a BB gun at one point. Nothing about a little boy. She loves the little boy defense. And I was just watching like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia clips. And if you've never watched the Nightman Cometh one, there's like a whole thing about you gotta pay the troll toll to get in that boy's hole. And every time like a little boy in a hole, because I watched that just last night, I was watching some funny clips from the show. Every time she mentions the hole. And now with Lori saying little boy, it's just stuck in my head every time they talk about the hole from the bullet. Because that's her like defense, right? It was somehow a little boy with a paintball gun, which makes absolutely no sense when you see the damage. Brandon at one point said maybe a paintball gun. Lori asked if things could have been kicked around before the crime scene tape was up. Maybe. Lori asked if it was odd Brandon was in the street after saying he was shot at because someone could have come back around. Objection, speculation, sustained. Brandon didn't know what happened. Brandon said, I don't know what happened, or something like that. That gets brought up again with the state and clarified. She used the word bewildered. Brandon was bewildered. Basically, I think Brandon was more in shock. She can't remember the exact color he said about the Jeep, but he was on his phone and showed a color to another person and said camo green. She didn't see the color on the screen. The witness has never used a silencer on a rifle, so she can't guess how loud that is. Lori asks, maybe in a Tesla shut with music, you wouldn't hear a bang with a silencer. Objection sustained. Maybe 10-foot distance, that wouldn't be a hard shot to shoot. They canvassed for casings and projectiles, but she wasn't part of that canvassing. She was there a couple hours, spoke to a neighbor, no follow-up with the neighbor. She didn't enter the house or garage. She wrote a report. She looked at the report to refresh her memory, the name of the neighbor. Lori asked, what'd she say to you? Objection, hearsay sustained. Lori tries to ask about someone in the neighborhood mentioning a blue. I'm assuming they're claim the vehicle is blue. Objection, hearsay sustained. I want to add in, if you watched my latest video, well, not my latest, I don't think it's my latest, my last video on this case, not the Idaho one, which that's up. There's a video on the Idaho appeal. If you watched my last video of this particular trial for Brandon, I showed the colors of the Jeep, and it's really easy to tell that it could be blue, green, or gray, depending on the person. So this doesn't help her. All this color argument is not helping Lori. It's not going to help her because the jury has seen the vehicle. Her report called the Jeep green. The only witness who heard a bang was Brandon. He thought it was a silencer. State redirect. Brandon said maybe BB gun because nothing came into his car. He had no idea there was a bullet hole in his vehicle. He could say what he saw that day. This is where we get into he was the bewildered thing. He could say what happened when he turned onto the street. The window went up, the rifle barrel, bang, window shatter, him drive off, Jeep Wrangler, 2 doors, Texas license plate, where it was parked. His car was still moving when it was shot. Other officers cleared the house. Brandon gave permission for that. Brandon was on 911 when she arrived in the street, and she directed him to a sidewalk. They bring up photos about the Jeep location to repeat what was said about that. She didn't do the search along the path he drove. That was other detectives. We have our first jury question. Yes, if you didn't know, in Arizona, I've mentioned it, but the jury can ask questions. Would it be easier to hit a closer or farther target? Actually, closer would be harder with a scope, and a state follow-up moving target would be harder, and freehand will make it harder. Without a rest, the kickback might move the gun up, and you miss your target by shooting above it. Remember, this bullet above Brandon's head, this was a home run, in my opinion, by the prosecution. They took the jury question, they expanded upon it, and used it to directly fit into the crime. Bravo, bravo, we take a break. Detective Pillar is finally back, and they have to basically redo all the talk about DNA and fingerprints and gunshot because it was over the weekend, it got cut off, so all the basics for how that works got repeated. Basically, if the tape was intact, it wasn't tampered with, numbers on the evidence, numbers read off earlier were blood were just evidence numbers. He processed a Jeep with Texas tags. All the doors on the Jeep had integrity stickers to show they hadn't been opened since being impounded, and it's shown in photos. Photos of the Jeep, you can see the seals, you can see the sticker on the window from Texas, you can see the tinting. He said it was very dark and you couldn't see inside without a flashlight. The rear wheel is on the vehicle, they show the license plate, and they show the back window open and have to explain that if the wheel is on, you have to open the back door to open the window. How interesting. Almost like that's the perfect reason to remove it. They collected gunshot residue based on where Brandon said. That would be the back cab area, the seats, front windows, hardtop. He's unaware at this point the rear seat might have been gone during the shooting, because the seat was in the vehicle at this time. They knew the wheel was gone because of Brandon and the license plate reader's photo. We watched the evidence collected to make sure it was collected from where he watched the evidence be collected to make sure it was collected from where he wanted, but he didn't collect it himself. And he made sure that the person who collected it put a seal on it and packaged it. They collected from many locations, collected outside from the back with the lug nuts on the tire. He watched all the swabs being done. She followed policy. He watched the prints being attempted to be recovered, but nothing was viable. They are spending a lot of time talking about how they collect and secure and move. He wasn't present when the impounding happened. Impounding process is explained and how it's sent off with integrity tape intact. He was present, though, when Alex Cox's blood blot was collected. That was also impounded with an integrity seal. He wrote the search warrants for cell phone records, process explained, and the ones he collected explained. Now, I was watching East Idaho News for this. I don't know if Court TV did it. Every time they read a phone number, they kept cutting the audio, and it cut some things off, and eventually certain parts I had to go back to Court TV to hear. I don't know if part of it was their video cutting out or not, but just so you know, if you watch it, that's why that's being cut out. I don't think any of the numbers are active, so I don't know. He did numbers associated to Lori Vallow and Alex Cox he identified as the cell phone records. It included the cell phone who made the calls for window tinting. Lori objects to submission foundation. I think she said Crawford, which I think is hearsay, but it's admitted anyway. I also feel I should point out about the cell phone stuff that it appears that like a couple points cell phone data was shown on the screen, but it wasn't shown to the public. Maybe because the cell phones were there. Maybe the judge told them not to. I don't know. That seems new. Arizona time on October 2nd, Alex Cox's phone called Lori Vallow's phone about 30 to 45 minutes after Alex Cox left home in Rexburg, Idaho. It was about a 24-minute long call. I think this is about his normal cell phone, where they did what they're claiming is a fake call. They also obtained a Melanie phone number. They had another Lori Vallow phone number. The December 28th search warrant for that Lori phone number was done. In 2020, he was told by the FBI they located a track phone used in the area of the shooting. The fact the FBI is involved, I think, is going to really lead credence to the prosecution. February 21st, he got a search warrant for that number. He, at the time, according to data, belonged to Alex Cox. It was subscribed to a Gmail. Track phone authenticated the record, and thumb drive of the track phone itself was authenticated. Evidence shows it was purchased from Walmart on September 25th in Idaho, activated the next day on the 26th. All the call detail records. Lori objects foundation, but it was admitted. This phone was only used from September 26th to October 2nd. Only one number ever calls a track phone. It belonged to Chad Daybell. Only one number is ever called from this cell phone. It belongs to Chad Daybell. The calls with Chad happened right before and after the shooting at Brandon's. They reached out to the FBI for help. The FBI helped track the location of the devices, and they provided the FBI Alex's Gmail data. At this point, Lori is up on cross. This man is the case agent. He was a case agent a couple hundred times. Case agents review all the reports. Brandon said the vehicle was green with Detective Rob. Witnesses in the neighborhood said a darker colored Jeep Wrangler. He doesn't remember hearing dark blue, but knows someone brought it up. There is no supplement of camo being said or shown. He doesn't remember it on body cam. It might have been. The gray Jeep came from contact with Chandler police. Brandon and neighbors did not call it a gray Jeep. And I put a note here. I still wouldn't call it a gray Jeep if I saw it on the street today and was asked what color it is. I just wouldn't. I even said that, sent the photo to some friends, described this color. No one gave gray. They gave green. Dark blue was one of them. One piece of glass was photographed in the road, and it wasn't tested to match the window, but it was consistent with all the other shards. It's possible Brandon moved the glass with his feet. They did a line search, and this detective participated, and nothing was found. They looked for any evidence they could find. Line search took up to an hour. Metal detector was part of the walk, and they also used it to look around the vehicle. He did not follow up with the neighbors himself. Other detectives did that. Lori said to find things helpful to what you think happened, and he said to find anything that happened. The detectives are neutral fact finders. Lori says he knew the neighbor Officer Rob spoke to said it was a wheel on the back. Objection, hearsay, sustained. Lori argues she wasn't talking about the fact of the matter, but the effect on the listener. Still sustained. Lori wants a sidebar. No, sustained. Next question. He can't guess how far it really was when it was shot, maybe 10 to 20 feet. No measurements because they didn't have exact locations. The police never determined the trajectory because they didn't know the exact placements. You can't tell from just a hole. The hole was about 2 inches, but that doesn't include all the indentation and scraping. Lori asked what type of bullet would have made that damage. Objection. I think it was for foundation of knowledge. Lori asked what he would use to terminate the type of bullet to make a hole that large. He doesn't have the qualifications. Lori says, wouldn't it be important to do testing to find out rifle versus handgun? You can't do it. He can't tell if it was done from 30 feet or 10 feet. No. Going up or down? No. Left or right? The evidence said it went west while east while the vehicle went west. And I have a little note here. It is an unknown starting point with an unknown ending point, moving at an unknown speed with an unknown angle. We're talking the angle of the vehicles, the way they sit, the tire pressure, any grooves in the road for that exact location. They do not have any fixed point. They have a random dent that theoretically could have been anywhere. There is no way to fix that dent in space to then try to get any sort of trajectory. They can take some guesses, but nothing concrete, which is what Lori is wanting. Lori asks if gunshot residue can be transferred from person to person. Not an expert, doesn't know. He doesn't know if it can be wiped on hands, doesn't know the 3 elements it's made of. He understands a collection of evidence, but testing is all done in a lab. He has collected GSR from a hand before. Lori asks about the elements, again an objection, there will be an expert. Sustained. He was with Tammy LeChick when she collected the samples. He lists the others that were there. She didn't take notes when taking the swab collection themselves. Lori asked if they flew on a commercial airline. They used a private plane. He didn't see LeChick take separate notes. He doesn't remember what LeChick wore. I was like, is she going to ask if it was bamboo and it could have contaminated things? Like, I don't know why she wants to know what she's wearing. Just want to insult the color. He is familiar with license plate readers, but not an expert. The amount used in Gilbert change over time. They have crime analysts that request the hits, and they found multiple. He hasn't been to the location where the one that was actually presented in trial was at. The others are still in the police report. They're just not submitted. They were all highway cameras, some Idaho ones. He doesn't know how many are stored and how long these are stored, and it varies by company. The time he was focused on was around October 2nd, and Lori keeps asking the same questions. Objection, asked, answered. Overruled, the judge says, even though the state is right, he gets to answer. The FBI helped with cell analysis. They met with Chandler police October 16th and got the first photo of the Jeep driving without the wheel. He contacted Chandler, they contacted the FBI together and went together to the FBI field office. He spoke directly to an agent from the FBI repeatedly. He doesn't know if their calls were turned over to the defense. Lori asks if he's familiar with the report. He is shown the report. Page 15 shows the phone purchase, 9:10 p.m. Arizona time. He's seen this page before, but he didn't draft it, so he doesn't want to give incorrect information. He doesn't do cell phone analysis. Lori is trying to ask about another number on the page, sidebar. He didn't get the information with Brandon's PI. He didn't share any information or get information from Brandon's PI. He might have had a phone call with him, and they talked about like criminal versus not investigations. Doesn't remember what was said. It was soon after October 2nd. Lori asked if it was to track Melanie. Objection sustained. Lori asked for legal objection, hearsay, relevance, and could open the door to something you don't want to open to. Because this would be, well, why was he tracking them? Because Lori's a murderer. He didn't email or text him with what he remembers. No information on the case. Lori asked if Brandon ever said he was frustrated with how the case was going. Objection. Hearsay. Relevance. Sustained. When he arrived on the scene, first people he spoke to were detectives. He can't remember which exact person was first. He doesn't remember who briefed him. Nobody seems to remember who was the briefing person first. Most likely one of the officers, more than likely not Officer Robb. Others did evidence collection and went on to speak to Brandon in the car. The house was cleared before he arrived. There was a third-party transcript used of his conversation with Brandon. He heard Brandon say he thought there was an error, and the detective listened to the audio but did not compare to the transcript. That company they used at the time sometimes did in fact have errors. 35 to 40-minute interview. Now, of course, remember, this full audio call is available to Lori. I'm assuming she could still go back, and if there was mention of a little boy, she could submit that. We're not getting that, so... Brandon went to friends and he talked to other detectives. He learned after the fact his friends walked into the crime scene area, but once established that they never did it again. They might have went into his house for drinks, but that was supervised and allowed. Remember, it was hot outside. This isn't a Sarah Boone situation. The crime scene is outside, therefore they can go inside and get their Dr. Pepper. They were there a few hours, explains exchanging contact information. He has a work cell phone he gives out. He took Brandon's cell phone physically with consent. A copy was made and was turned over soon after. He thinks Brandon picked it up. Maybe that next morning they break for the evening, and the judge is going to try to get final instructions done by tomorrow evening. I don't know how many witnesses are left for the prosecution. Things are going a little rapidly today, even with the delay this morning. It might close out before Friday. If Lori's not going to do a defense, it might close out. We'll see. And I'll see you in the next video. I will also say that you might want to check out some stuff other people are going to be covering. If anyone covers Mike Lindell, sounds like he had a little bit of a freak out on the stand today, testified in his own defense. They kind of just let him rant because it was a positive for the prosecution about how much money he's losing, about how the person that prosecution, it's a civil case, but the basically he is complaining, he's being sued for defamation. He went up on the stand and is yelling about how the person suing him is part of the greatest conspiracy ever, like in our nation history. And he's asked for evidence, and he's like, the evidence is that we are in court. And it is a complete and utter mess. And he's saying things that go against what his defense has been pushing. So if he had a shot, I think he probably blew it today. I'm not going to cover that right now because honestly, it seems so good. I want the transcripts. I want the transcripts to be able to read exactly what he had to say. I'm definitely going to have like big disclaimers on the video so YouTube doesn't strike me down because of the wild things he says. Highly recommend you look up if anyone's covering it because that is going to be a lot of entertainment, and it's not going well for him. It sounds like even before this case, he said he was borrowing money to meet payroll.